Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again for an episode of Fathers and Sons. We are here today with a friend of ours, Luke Martin, who's joining us for an episode on a little bit different this time. We're going to be talking about raising kids and growing up overseas. And as some of you may know, the Bailey family, so my dad here and I, we have spent a large portion of the past 20 years living abroad due to my dad's job. And Luke Martin is a colleague of my dad's, and so he and my dad are going to hopefully share some insights into this whole process, as well as into what it takes to raise kids in an environment that's different than they grew up in themselves. You know, most kids grow up with a hometown, a school they went to, friends they've known since kindergarten. I did not have that growing up. What I had instead was a childhood that crossed continents, changed languages, and started over frequently. So we're hoping you guys will enjoy a conversation about that. And I think, Dad, you're going to start us off with a bit of a story.
Yeah. So I want to first thank Luke Martin for joining us. We've been colleagues for quite a while, actually, more than a decade, and we actually work together on a daily basis today. Now we work at the U.S. Embassy in Belmopan, Belize, but we met more than a decade ago, back in 2012, in the Philippines, in Manila, Philippines, back when we were kind of new foreign service officers together,
And young. We were young too.
and
Remember those
much,
days? Yeah.
much younger. Yeah, fewer wrinkles, fewer aches and pains. And so the Philippines for our family was our third tour, and I think Luke, it was your first tour. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, first
Yeah.
tour. Yeah.
And I remember when you guys arrived in the Philippines. Um, and one of the great things, we work for the U.S. State Department. One of the great things that the State Department does, it sort of assigns a host family or a sponsor family to each incoming family. Or maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as one of the things that, kind of defined our overseas life, the community aspect of living overseas. Um, and I remember when you guys arrived, we arrived a little bit before you did. And I don't remember who your sponsor family was. Do you
The
remember who it was?
Bonds. Yeah.
The Bonds, yeah.
Matt and Jamie Bond. Yeah,
Matt
that's
and
right.
Jamie Bond, also really good friends. But we were kind of involved as well. We met you when you first arrived, and our wives became friends. We became friends. We worked in different parts of the embassy, but we kind of hit it off early. But we had a family tragedy
Mm.
strike us kind of early after you arrived. My wife's father, Arthur Edwards, became really ill, and we got a call in the middle of the night. We were, of course, in the Philippines from Melinda's brother, basically that her father was failing fast, and that's the call when you're overseas, far away. Philippines is a 20 plus hour flight from the west coast of the United States. That's the call you don't want to get. It's one of the occupational hazards of working overseas. And Melinda's brother basically said, "You need to get here as fast as you can. Dad is not going to make it very much longer." So we were up all night trying to find flights and trying to figure out how that would work. And Melinda was going to go, and we were trying to figure out whether she would take any of the kids. That morning, I don't remember all the details, but your wife Sherry and my wife Melinda had a conversation, and your wife basically said, "Look, go. I will take care of your family. I will
Mm.
take care of your pets. You go do what you need to do." And we barely knew each other.
Hmm.
And you guys, this was in November 2012. You guys had just arrived.
Yeah, we had. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we sort of felt like we should have been the ones sort of taking care of you and, you know, easing your transition into foreign service life. But, that demonstration of compassion and of kindness has always stuck with me, not just on the personal level, but as a demonstration of just the kind of community and sort of love,
Mm.
that has made our life in the foreign service, really wonderful. And we've always remembered that. Melinda has always remembered that, and she and Sherry are good friends to this day. Melinda did go she did make it before her father passed away. She was with him when he passed. The rest of the family, we followed and were able to be there for the funeral. You guys took care of our pets. We had a
Skittle,
cat,
I remember Skittle.
Skittle, the golden retriever.
Singular, it wasn't Skittles, it was Skittle. Yeah.
It was
Uh-huh.
just
Hmm.
one Skittle.
Yeah.
I think one of the cats like got bit by a spider or some weird thing. You had to take it
Oh
to a
my gosh, I
vet,
forgot about the vet visit. That's right. It was a spider or something. Yeah. Hmm.
some weird thing. So anyway, that is a memory that I have, and not just a memory, but a demonstration of the kind of community spirit, and the demonstration of compassion and friendship that that really solidified our relationship, and the kind of friends that you've been to us.
I think that's great too because I remember that specifically as well. I had forgot about the cat with the spider bite, but yeah, it came back to me now. But that's sort of the absurd spot that you're in overseas is, we the kind of the support that you need, and it's not like driving down the street when somebody's suffering, or it's the 20-hour flight. It's the logistics of getting all these kids out of country and all of that. And I think, like we've talked before, Heath, is that some, friends or family don't quite understand this relationship that
Yeah.
we have with the rest of the world. It's complex, and it's not the easiest thing to go back. And yeah, anyway, I'm glad that was a great first tour for us, and I loved being in Manila, and it was great connecting with all of you guys. And that was your last tour, Luke, and you
Yeah.
headed off to college after that, or you head to your mission after that.
Yeah, I did. I left from the Philippines to Paris, France to serve a mission for our
Yeah, that was
church.
pretty tough, right?
Yeah. Big change, a little bit of culture shock, right?
Right, yeah.
Um, no, I think this is a great story to start with, though, because it illustrates, like you were saying, Luke, and we'll hopefully be clear in our delineation between the two
Oh yeah,
Lukes.
we do need to figure this out. Is it like
Yeah,
Luke the Elder and Luke the
right.
Younger? I'm not quite sure how we're going to clarify
Hopefully,
that,
hopefully
but
we can just recognize from voices, but um, I
Luke
I do.
B, Luke M.
Yeah, I do think it's a great story because for this podcast in particular, because what I am hoping that we can talk about today, and I talked to you guys a little bit about this before we started recording, so not to put you on the spot to any extent, but my main question today is, whether or not you would do this again as two
mm,
fathers who have lived for a while now in a very
yeah,
unique situation with your children. And, as that story shows, a very kind of flying by the seat of your pants kind of a situation. There's a lot
mm,
of improv happening abroad that I think is different than when you live in a very stable, normal community.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
so I'm thinking today we can talk through some questions. Before we dive into that, though, Luke Martin, would you like to just introduce yourself real quick? Give us any, quick info, a little bit of quick information about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Luke Bailey. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I was born in Canada. I married my wife Sherry. She's from San Diego, and thus my dual citizenship. I've got four kids. Olivia, who's a little bit younger than you, kind of Anna's age. I think they were in the
Hmm.
same grade. And then there's Maya, and she would be the same age as Molly. And then Frida's, and then David, who's younger than all of you. So we got four kids, same as you guys. And Manila was our first overseas adventure as a whole family. Um, anyway, and it's just us and empty nest now, same as Heath. So we came in as a full family, and I don't think I quite visualized 20, this 15 to 20 years later, that it actually meant that we would have no kids along with us. That really would be my first sort of kind of misconception on how all this worked. It's like, yeah, we're going in with this big family overseas, family life, and then it's like, wait, they leave?
You
I don't
sound
know if
just like my parents.
yeah, I don't know if I approve of that or even understand how that works, but that would
Uh,
be my story. Yeah.
that's That's interesting. Okay, so really quick, I don't think we've actually done this before, Dad, but can both of you guys just give us a quick hit on where you've been? Like, just quick list. Luke, you want to
Sure.
go
Heath,
first?
you go first. Oh, okay, I'll go first. Sure. So Manila, that was my first. I know that was Heath's third. From there, we went to Brussels, Belgium. From there, I went to Afghanistan. So I went there for a year, and Sherry and the kids, except Olivia, they stayed in Brussels, and Maya graduated high school in Brussels. After Afghanistan, I did some Chinese, and then we moved off to Taiwan for 4 years. We were there. From Taiwan, ended up here in Belize. Mr. Bailey.
Okay.
Yeah. So our first post was San Jose, Costa Rica. Then we went to Riga, Latvia, by way of Latvian language training at the Foreign Service Institute in Arlington, Virginia, now called the National Foreign Affairs Training Center. After that, we went to the Philippines, to Manila. After Manila, we went to Kenya and then to Senegal, Dakar, Senegal. Before Senegal, we learned French, so we went again to Arlington, Virginia to learn French, which was harder than Latvian in some ways, ironically. After Senegal, we served in Washington for a year. Then I served in northern Iraq in the Kurdistan region. And then after Iraq, we came here to Belize.
Yeah, so lots of places. Thanks for
Yeah.
the breakdown, guys. The reason I ask is, Luke, what you had just mentioned about, your kids are no longer with you. This is a pretty big adventure, honestly, that you both embarked on, decade plus, 2 decades plus, hence. And when you started it, your life was significantly different than it is now. So, I'm curious for both of you, Dad, I know your story relatively well, but I mean, what led to the decision to take your family overseas, and has it been what you expected?
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, that is.
Let me
Ahead,
let me answer that, because I think my answer to that is linked to would I do it again? And I was an attorney before we joined the Foreign Service, and Luke, you were 12 when we entered the Foreign Service, so you will
Not me.
remember.
So Luke Bailey, not Luke
Luke
Yes,
Martin.
me.
Bailey,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
not Luke
Okay, just
Martin.
be clear. Yeah, okay.
And I
Yeah,
was
you and
just
I
barely 12. Like we
just
had
barely 12.
yeah, you left for training the week after my 12th birthday.
The
Wow.
day of your 12th
Yeah,
birthday.
the day of my 12th. That's true. That's right.
Wow.
It was actually the day of your 12th birthday. I got on a plane and went to Washington, D.C. that day. And so you had, Luke Bailey, some agency and some input into the decision, if you'll recall.
Mm-hmm.
I became interested in joining the Foreign Service on 9/11. I had a friend who was who knew about the Foreign Service. I didn't really know that much about the Foreign Service. I had thought about becoming a diplomat. I didn't really know what that meant when I was in college. I was a political science major initially, but I found political science so boring. I changed my major in the middle of my freshman year and became an English major, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to become an academic, so I went to law school, and I graduated from law school. I did well as a lawyer. But on 9/11, I was standing there in my living room watching the news like everybody else. I had my youngest daughter in my arm. I had worked in New York briefly, and I was angry and I was hurt like every other American and others around the world. And I thought, I need to do something different. And being a lawyer wasn't all that much fun, to be honest, especially when I was, early in my career. So I called up my friend who had always talked to me about the Foreign Service. This would be really fun. Let's do this. And he and I went and took the Foreign Service exam in April 2002, as soon as we could after 9/11. Now, I didn't get in the first time I took it. The Foreign Service exam is pretty hard. So I took it a couple of times, and eventually in 2007. Well, in 2005, I passed. And it took me some time to get up the courage to leave my law practice. That's a longer story. But in 2007, I was given an offer, and I accepted it. So my motivation was patriotism, was a desire to serve. It was also adventure. It was also a desire to kind of do something interesting. I've always loved languages, and I've always seen that jetliner flying overhead and thought, I wish I was on that plane. That just seems like fun.
For context,
But
I think this is important. One of, Dad, your favorite movies growing up was Indiana Jones. I just think that needs to be said. All right,
yeah,
continue.
I can see that. I can see that for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And then I guess just the final point I'll make, we had a family council about it. We had a family meeting, and
Yeah,
you probably remember, we went
I
to
do
Chili's,
very vividly. Yeah, at
and we,
Chili's. Yeah, funny place, and we knew it was special because we never went to Chili's.
yeah, yeah. And we talked about it. And, we probably ought to have a conversation with Mom about it, because I don't think it was her first choice.
Hmm.
But the kids were really excited. And as a family, we made the decision to do it. And so with all of that in mind, would I do it again? That all of that weighs pretty heavily in favor of yes
Yeah.
for me.
Interesting.
Luke
So,
Martin?
yeah, so my story's a little bit different. So mine was, okay, so if I would go to the actual beginning of it, it was just before, probably it was around September 2009. And I told my mom, no, it was a little bit later than that. So this probably was December of 2009. I told my mom, we're kind of thinking about maybe doing something international. This was partly because, I was a little dissatisfied in my career. We also lived in a pretty small little, very white town, and we've got 2 biological and 2 adopted, a little mixed, and we wanted a bit more. So we wanted a bit more cultural diversity for our family. So I remember I told my mom, probably told her actually either end of December or right at the beginning of January of 2010. And on January 12th, 2010, my mom was killed in the Haiti earthquake.
Oh my
And
goodness.
for me, that was, of course, sort of a very, that fundamentally changed our family and changed who I was. And that was part of one of my last conversations with her, was this idea of doing diplomacy overseas. And her comment was, oh, that would be perfect for you and the family. And so she could see that. And so then once my mom had died, I really felt that I wanted to do it not for patriotism, not for foreign policy, but to do something meaningful for my family and for me too, to not just like work a regular job and just come home and make money. I wanted something that counted for more than that. She was in Haiti on a medical mission, so she was a nurse. She was serving there. So that's where my journey started with it. It's interesting you brought up the Chili's thing. So we didn't go to Chili's, but I made a PowerPoint presentation for my family after.
I love it.
Yeah, it was. And I laid it all out for, so Olivia would have been the oldest. She was 15, down to David, who would have been, I guess, about 7. I dressed everything, so living overseas, what would it be like? What does the family think? And they were fine with it. I don't think it made a whole lot of sense to them. I could have said we're moving to San Diego or we were moving to wherever it was. They weren't big geography people. It didn't make sense. But anyway, we did it. And I think my answer to the question of would we do it again? I don't think I could do anything other than this. It was my only sort of option. I often think, I look at my brothers as good examples of, they stayed in their communities, they raised their kids in their communities and in their churches, and I sometimes feel very envious of the lives that they have had and the very solid communities that they have, and ours are all over the place, and I do wish sometimes that was our story. but it's not, and I realized personally, I don't think I could have done that. Like, I was just wired for this kind of work and for international experience. It's just what I could do. It's just what I needed to do. So mine isn't so much would I, but it's like I didn't really have an option. I was kind of blessed by my mom, and it's what fit with me, and the kids were open to it, so we went.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I like both of these stories because I think there's an element of personal motivation on both of your sides. Luke, I can relate to this idea of not feeling like you could have done anything else. I think that that's present in a lot of people who find their calling or whatever it might be. And Dad, for you, this, patriotism and, moral desire to give back and do things of that nature. But both of you also mentioned including your family in the decision. So, maybe a harder question, or I don't know, harder, but I think that to me, the idea of parenting abroad seems very scary. And I did live through this as a kid. Do you think your kids would answer the same way? Like, do you think your kids feel like they would do it again?
Well, there's a preposition here, like, so parenting abroad or parenting from abroad. I mean, they're two different things, and like
That's
they're two
true.
different stories. Like,
I have not thought about that. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't stop when they leave, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
I, you know, so the answer I gave is really a partial answer because there are also costs, and I think Luke Martin, you um, you addressed that in part. There are costs to the decision to pursue this kind of a lifestyle and this kind of a family path. There are things that we give up. We're tremendously blessed, and the people that we've met, the experiences that we've had, um, family unity. That's the biggest blessing in our family's life. I think the kids in our family. Luke, you can tell me if I'm off base here, but I think Luke, Anna, Molly, and Daisy are their own best friends, and the unity within our family probably could not have been produced in just a normal sort of suburban life had we stayed in Las Vegas, where we're from, and there would have been too many distractions and moving around and that kind of thing. I'm grateful for that. So, but there are costs. Not having a hometown, not having connections to certain elements of our culture that I wish we had. I think each one of you kids, Luke Bailey, relate to the United States and to extended family and to the job market and to dating and to all these different things that I'm making air quotes normal American kids. You relate in a different way,
Yeah.
and that can be both good and bad. So I'm not sort of saying it's all positive. And hindsight's always dangerous because you forget things and you look at things from a perspective. I think each one, I've talked to each of the kids about their experiences, and I think each of our kids is grateful for the positives, but also recognizes some of those costs. I don't know, Luke Martin, about your kids. How do they feel?
so I'm kind of the 50-50 rule on this one here, and I've heard this before. Like 50% of your kids are going to appreciate the overseas experience, and 50% are just going to hold this as a bitter, pill for their whole lives. And I think I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Two of them are super grateful that this is what they got signed up for, because we certainly signed them up for it. One of my daughters is working at our training institute, the FSI,
Yeah.
and she loves this. Like, she loves this idea of diplomacy and overseas, and this kind of formed who she is, for sure. But, one of my other kids is like, no, she wanted to live in a little town and have the same friends and go to the same, middle school and high school dances, and we didn't give that kind of life. So that's that's hard. I mean, you can't satisfy all the kids in all the simple ways, maybe unless, no, probably not. Like even living in that community, whether it's Las Vegas or Pine Valley, California, they weren't guaranteed, perfect life of, community interaction. Like that just wasn't necessary. So anyway, did we steal this from them? Yeah, maybe in some ways, but we offered different, not more, but
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
I'll have to be honest, part of my motivation in asking that question is a little bit selfish because I am,
Good.
at the beginning of my parenting journey. And
Yeah.
my wife, Nikki, and I have been talking a lot about this idea of what we do for ourselves as parents versus what we do for our kids as parents. So my wife, Nikki, just graduated from school to be a physician assistant. She's a PA.
Yeah, congrats.
A
That's
little bit of
awesome.
context. Appreciate it. She's starting her career. She's taking some of her very first patients on her own, actually on Monday, and she's really
Yay.
excited about it. But it's also very hard for her. Like she's so excited and she loves the work she's doing, and she feels very passionate about this idea of giving back to her community and giving back to people. And I'm of the opinion and the belief that the medical field in particular takes a certain kind of person. Not everybody can do it. And so I'm very grateful for those who can. But it's also like incredibly difficult for Nikki to not be at home with our daughter and to feel like she is, sacrificing time with our daughter in order to pursue this passion and this, worthwhile goal. And I think that's something that a lot of parents struggle with. I sort of feel like I've done the opposite in the sense that my career, so I work in finance. I'm a personal financial advisor, and I don't know how honest to be here, but it is not it's not sort of my calling, if that makes sense.
Don't be too honest. Just to kind of say, yeah, that's right.
I love elements of what I do, and I think it's a very valuable part of the world, and I feel like I do good. But I chose this job because it would give me a lot of flexibility, and I can take time off when I need to be with River. I could move anywhere to be with Nikki when school was starting, and I also feel. I feel, Nikki feels she's missing out because she pursued her passion, and I feel that I'm missing out because I did not. So in some ways, I don't know that you're ever happy. There's never a way to, check all the boxes. And I think that's okay. Dad, you and I listened to a podcast, shout out here, Econ Talk by Russ Roberts.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about how happiness is not necessarily the best goal. There's a lot of other goals to have. Not saying I'm not happy. I'm very happy.
A life well lived.
Yeah, fulfillment, doing good. Anyway, I just the impetus for my question of would you do it again is a lot of it comes down to that this like paradox or this juxtaposition between do you pursue what you feel is most valuable to you? Do you pursue what you feel is most valuable to your kids? Is there even a way to know if those are the same or if they're different? And I'm not sure there's a great answer to it, but it's something I've been thinking a lot about.
Let me chime in on one thing. I'm going to tell a story that I was told by, I don't know if it's Heath or Melinda. I don't know who told me this, your mom or dad. But so I think our families have been formed similarly as far as the bond between siblings is really close. And both families, at least from Anna's perspective and from like Olivia's perspective, they want these compounds. They want us all to live all together, multi-generational.
About this, yeah.
So you're talking about, maybe Nikki can't be with River all the time. But so I think Heath, you're the one who told me the story, but I passed it on to my kids. Everybody loves the story. And it's of one day that River's at a playground and it's playing with another kid, and River asks this little kid, because Anna was her caregiver, and goes, so where's your Anna? And I love this idea of that everybody should have an Anna. Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a beautiful thing about these complexities of families that we've created. It's a little bit different than maybe the nuclear family of North American sort of idealism is. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more complex, and maybe it's partly that diamond under pressure overseas is that we rely on each other differently. So Anna comes alongside you, and she really is like this aloe mother of River, and I think it's a really beautiful thing. It's what my kids aspire to, is they want this complex, messy life of kids and grandkids and parents all intermingled in this compound. And I think maybe that's kind of one of the benefits that we did in making this. Like, all decisions have, pros, cons, sacrifices, and benefits and blessings. One is we fundamentally rewired the relationships of these kids and us. It's like, it's different. Like, it just is different. We want different things.
Yeah.
Everyone wants
Yeah.
an Anna kind of thing, like this idea,
Every,
like this.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a nice thing.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that. Yep.
yeah.
Hmm.
There's a couple of things that occur to me as well. One is that I have often thought, wouldn't it be great to have parallel lives? This idea that you could live different lives. You could live like separate, like I've got my LA Dodgers hat on. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player or
Yeah.
a marine biologist or Indiana Jones, and you just, it either fortunately or unfortunately, you kind of got to pick. But you can also try to pursue things sort of laterally. And, like your mom is a good example of this. Um, you know,
For clarity.
there's lots of, yeah, Luke Bailey, your mom,
Clarity. Yeah.
Your wife, you could say my wife is a good
my
example.
wife, yeah, my wife, Melinda. There's lots of opportunities that she forewent, right? She gave up lots of opportunities with some of the choices she made. She's a stay-at-home mom. She decided to do that, but she also included her kids in a lot of the things she did. And you guys know that she got involved in the community, and you guys, did a lot of community service, and she served a lot of, like in Kenya, a lot of the young women that she served in Kenya, and a lot of the kind of the library work and the orphanage work and those kinds of things. And along the way, she taught you guys those values and those skills, and she's doing it now, with here in Belize, she and Anna with this little library project that they're working on here. So, you look for opportunities. You can't do everything, but you can and should look for those opportunities. Yeah, I don't know. There's no perfect answer to those questions. There's only sort of the best you can, and that idea of trying to pursue the life well lived rather than just momentary or temporary happiness. I think that's about the best that I've come up with.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I appreciate both of those perspectives. I think it's a really integral question that you start to think about when you become a parent. I was reading about like philosophical bases for these kinds of things before this, and there's the whole Aristotelian idea of, I think it's pronounced eudaimonia, like
Mm-hmm.
the concept of human flourishing, that argues that you cannot fully flourish if you like suppress your own genuine calling. But then there's other schools of thought, Kantian philosophy and Stoics and things who believe more in the idea of like fulfilling your duty, controlling our presence and the intentions that we have. And anyway, I don't think that there is like a single answer to this idea of what you are meant to choose between. And sometimes, like you're saying, Dad, it doesn't have to be a choice between these two things. But I think it's an important thing to factor into your decision making and to at least be aware of while you're choosing these big, life-changing, continent-leaping careers that you've chosen, and smaller ones
Yeah.
too.
Well,
Well,
Luke, sorry, Luke, just
no, go
one
ahead.
thing.
Okay.
We've talked on the podcast before about adjusting as
Yeah.
well. And I think you can adjust. Adjusting is scary. Quitting is scary. But we've talked about this in the context. I can't remember which episode it was, but sometimes we have to change course,
The Odyssey,
and
yeah. You
and
gotta
that's what I.
get off Cersei's island when it's time to go home to Persephone.
That's right. When you find that you are off course, you can adjust, and sometimes it's time to do that. You have to recognize that. Go ahead, Luke Martin. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I actually forgot my thoughts, so it's okay.
Oh no.
Short-term memory of an elderly man, it's just
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I do have
Sherry
to
just
correct
walked
myself.
back and she nodded appreciatively at that. So yeah,
I also have to jump in and correct myself. I just called Odysseus' wife Persephone, and it's Penelope, so
Penelope. Okay.
might have to
Penny.
so I don't
Hey,
get.
are you guys having an episode on the Odyssey? Because I noticed you were commenting on it. Have you done this, or are you waiting for Christopher Nolan's movie?
We do have one that's out. Yeah, it was the first one we
Ooh.
released, so it's on the.
And then you do a follow-up after the Matt Damon-led
Oh, well,
Christopher
we'll
Nolan
see.
one. Yeah.
There's enough there, yeah, for
Yeah.
another one probably.
Okay, good.
But before
Okay.
we get too far into this is actually the last thing I wanted to talk about. We're coming up on time here, but I have to jump in and just say that I personally am so grateful for this lifestyle. Like, I am so glad that I grew up this way. Dad, I do agree there were costs. I have very few long-term friends in my life. I have some cousins that I'm very close with. I have a few friends that I made overseas that I still keep in touch with and that I feel are still friends, are still people that I could rely on and who we call with good news. But I do feel that there are costs, roots maybe being the biggest one. But at the same time, I really am so grateful for a lot of the things that I learned. And one of the best things I think that we got out of this, besides the family dynamic and the philosophical fulfillment, was just how cool it is and how fun it is. So you guys are getting into this a little bit with these little anecdotes, but I wanted to ask if either of you have, or if both of you have, any things that you feel were like, we gotta talk a little bit about the fun stuff here. What is one of the funnest things that you feel like came out of the foreign service or living abroad with your kids? And that you're
What I
able to
love
do
about
and
this is
share?
we're getting all like old man, like just like reflective and blah, blah, blah. And it sounds like this has been a rather dismal journey that we've been on, but no, there's been so many great trips and adventures,
Yeah.
right, Heath? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first. One of the things that comes to mind immediately for me is the travel. We started this actually before we joined the Foreign Service, Luke. You and I, when you were 10,
Yep.
these trips that I took, and it goes with, along with the fathers and sons theme, dad and the kid, just us going on an overseas trip. And you and I went to Costa Rica. You were 10, so this was before we joined the Foreign Service, and somehow we previewed our first tour. And we went to Costa Rica, and we did like a poor man's backpacking trip through Costa Rica, which was brilliant. But then with each one of the kids, I did a trip, and the launch pad was wherever we were in the world, and it sort of ranged in age from 14 to 16 was about the sweet spot for the kids. And so with Anna, we went to Spain, and she and I spent a week in Spain, just she and I. With Molly, she and I went to Nepal, and we hiked the Khumbu
I
region up
remember when you went to that one from Manila. I
from
remember
Manila.
that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that.
So it kind of
I am
depended.
incredibly jealous of that trip.
Yeah, made Luke jealous. That's tough. And then with Daisy, because her interests kind of were more on the theater, she was a theater kid. So we were in Kenya at the time. We went to London, and we basically spent the week going to West End plays, and we went to like 5 plays. And we also had the opportunity. My mom was born in England, and she has cousins still in England. And so we looked up her cousins, and we rented a car and we drove up through England and we visited my mom's cousins in England. So those kinds of opportunities, they were low budget, pretty much low budget. They were just me and one of the kids. We had lots of fun family trips too, but those one-on-one trips that, had I been a rich lawyer, we could have afforded to do those kind of trips, but they would have been different. The dynamics would have been different. They would have been high. They would have been different. I would have been a different person. Our family would have been a different family. The dynamics would have been different. I just know they would have been. These were different. The launch pad was different. The budget was different. The ethos of the trip was different. And so I will always remember those. And I hope, Luke Bailey, you as kids remember those trips in a kind of a special way.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I appreciate that, Dad. Okay, Luke Martin, go for it. What are your thoughts?
Well, certainly the travel as well. It's interesting you mentioned money as well. I think I started running the numbers when I was in my, early 40s. It's like, okay, for me to afford the kind of international travel that I'd like to expose my kids to, I'd have to be some corporate executive of which I had no interest in doing, and then I'd also have no time for it. So the idea of being overseas with accessible travel was super appealing. So, from the Philippines, we had great trips all through the Philippines, but also into Southeast Asia. I think Cambodia was one of my favorite ones, up to Siem Reap, and just seeing those kids, wandering in Angkor Wat was, something I will take to my final breath. It was just a beautiful thing to see everybody experiencing that. And then all through Western Europe, while we were in Belgium was great. Taiwan, we were trapped on the island during COVID, so we got a lot of Taiwan experience since the island was all closed down. It certainly was a benefit of this overseas life, and something that, my kids would go back and they would tell their friends or their family or cousins about this, and it's almost like, you remember the story like when, I guess, the Columbus and his entourage were coming to the U.S. Apparently, they say the natives looked out and they could not see the ships. Like, it just didn't even register. They couldn't see anything on the horizon because it's not something that they can process. And I sometimes think that's the experience of all you guys when you come back. You tell these stories and people are like, okay, anyway,
Yes.
let me tell you
Yes.
about this TV show
So
I'm
true.
watching
Oh
right
my
now.
gosh, that's so true.
Yeah, so it's like, and that was always hard and still is hard for the kids when they talk about their overseas and their travel experience. It doesn't quite align with maybe what their, North American-based friends do. But I often think that it's like we gave them this really special gift of travel that everybody doesn't understand, but for them it has formed them into the characters that they are, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, this quick side note on that. I have in my notes here in parentheses the word pretentious. And it's just this idea I've thought about this since I was a kid. Like when people ask me where I'm from, I generally give a pretty vague answer. Because usually they don't really care. It's just a question we ask. It's like, how are you? As sad as this is, generally when you ask somebody that, both parties, you don't really care how each other are. You're just asking.
Where are you from? I
is the
don't
same
care
thing.
either. Yeah, I don't really
No,
care.
but if they do care and I explain, as often as not, I feel like I'm coming off as pretentious because it's just different.
Yeah.
It's like the simple fact when to me this is not like a choice about where I'm from. It was just my life. It just was what it was. Anyway, I think I feel validated a little bit that other people recognize that same idea.
Oh, my kids have the same issue, and it's always like when people ask, where are you from? It's like, well, I was born in, our kids were all born in different places. They're born in
Right.
Alaska, San Diego, Taiwan, China. And so they never know what to answer. It's like, well, we kind of grew up in San Diego, and then we were overseas, and now I live here, and we're dual citizens, and it's a confusing thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You can find community though in the fact that other people have that. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right.
So One last thing here. I wanted to just add my 2 cents to the question I asked. So you guys, I appreciate this like travel bug piece. I think that that's such a huge part of why this was such an incredible childhood for me to have as well. I mean, we went all over the place, and it was so fun. In addition to that, I want to add in this idea that not only was it the trips we got to take, but it was the reality of living in a place that we wouldn't have maybe even traveled to without being there.
Right.
And I just want to offer
That's
one
right.
example. I mean, there are hundreds I've been going through in my head, but one of the things I think about all the time, Dad, and you'll remember this, is the market in Riga in Latvia. So, Luke Martin, for your benefit here, there are some old zeppelin hangars in Riga that they've converted into these sort of farmers markets. They're more permanent, but each zeppelin hanger is dedicated to a specific kind of food. So there's like a fish hanger and a cheese hanger and a vegetable hanger. And I would never have seen that, I don't think, ever in my entire life. And I've never been anywhere else. I've been to 38, 39 countries. I've never been anywhere else that has ever had anything like that. And I never would have seen it. And I never would have walked down this weird kind of backside of a zeppelin hanger smelling fish while someone argued in Russian off to the side about, whatever it was. And then walked into the next hangar and gotten to try all these different kinds of honey. And then I discovered this cheese there called brinza that I love. And, it just had all these like really unique experiences that weren't just travel related. It wasn't just, I went somewhere cool because we were able to, I say just, but I don't mean to diminish that idea either. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that this question that I had at the beginning of would you do it again? I have to confess, I feel like I kind of set you guys up with that because at the end of the day, this is not, I think this is a little bit of a like false question. It's not so much, one or the other. It's how we lived in the choice that we did make. It's not did you choose the right thing or would you do it again? It's did you live the best you could in the choice that you made? And I personally feel that, you guys did a great job, Dad, and I feel like we did. But if there's anything that I would take away from this conversation as a parent moving forward, it would be that, we're going to choose what we choose. And sometimes you make choices that are really hard to go back on. It's not very easy to pack all your kids up once you move to Manila and go back to San Diego. But once you get there, like what choices do you make next? And how do you live in that choice that you've made?
Yeah.
I hate metafiction and all these kind of time travel stories. They're everywhere right now because I think there's this fear that people have or this like really deep regret that different decisions could have been made and that they, it's just a real obsession about our culture like that. But as opposed to just resting in this kind of sense of this was the decision, this is the owner. And sorry, Keith, you said maybe there are multiple universes, but like this is this one universe. And we decided to do this. You decided for whatever reason to join the Foreign Service, and I did. It took our path down this. I love the story about the Zeppelin hangars because it's just like a quirky little thing. You would have never experienced that. You would have never seen that. Yeah. And it makes your life unique. And so all these things... It makes it better, like in a way. And it's your life. It's just your life. And my kids will have the same things. I'm sure they will say, oh, the kitten that we saw on this trip in Bohol that they wanted to bring back home, whatever it is, but it makes it rich and unique in a way that is just them. So could we do it differently? I'm happy with the path we're on. Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. Well, that may be a good place for us to close. Luke Martin, we really appreciate you joining us today. This has been a fun conversation.
Luke Bailey, you're a myth and a legend, and it's always great. It's always funny where your mom and dad will always say, Luke something, our Luke. So you're our Luke, and I'm the other Luke. So,
it's a good name. It's a good name. I'm glad.
It's a great name. It's a powerful name. So thank you.
We chose wisely.
You sure did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks to both of you, Lukes, for all that you are, and Thanks for joining us tonight, Luke Martin.
Thank you, Heath. Thank you, Luke Bailey. This has been awesome. I love the podcast. I look forward to listening to the rest of them too. So,
Thanks. We'll
okay.
see
All right.
everybody next time.
All
Okay.
right.
Cheers. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.